Imagine you are dropped right in the middle of a sprawling, completely unfamiliar city. You ask two different locals for directions to the center of town, and they hand you two completely different maps.
Yeah, and one map shows this, like, massive paved highway that it claims is perfectly safe.
Right.
But then the other local looks at you, points to that exact same highway on their map, and says, do not take that road. It leads straight off a cliff.
Exactly. You'd be totally paralyzed.
Mhm.
Before you can even take a single step, you have to figure out which map maker is telling the truth and which one is just, well, completely detached from reality.
And that is exactly the situation the author of our source material today found himself in as a 9-year-old boy.
Yeah, welcome to the deep dive, by the way. Today we are unpacking Robert Kiyosaki's classic Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and exploring this staggering reality that traditional schooling explicitly leaves out the actual foundational rules of money.
Right, because the author grew up with two highly influential fathers, offering him totally contradictory maps to financial survival.
Yes, the two dads. So let's look at the biological father, who he calls his poor dad.
Yeah, so this guy was highly educated. I mean, we're talking about a PhD, a very secure government job, basically a man who did everything right according to the traditional map.
But he still struggled financially his entire life, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
His core mindset was summarized in one phrase he just kept repeating, which was, I can't afford it.
Wow.
And he firmly believed that the love of money was the root of all evil.
Okay, but then you have his best friend's father, his rich dad, and this guy was an 8th grade dropout.
Yeah, totally different path.
A staunch capitalist who eventually went on to become like one of the wealthiest men in Hawaii. And his mindset wasn't a statement at all. It was a question. He always asked, how can I afford it?
Right, and he believed that the lack of money was the root of all evil, the complete opposite.
Okay, let's unpack this because it's so subtle but so powerful. Saying I can't afford it is just, well, it's final. It's a period at the end of a sentence.
Yeah, it shuts everything down.
Exactly. It literally puts your brain to sleep because you've just accepted defeat. You don't have to do any mental heavy lifting. But asking how can I afford it, that's a puzzle.
It forces the brain to wake up and exercise like a muscle. It turns a closed door into a problem to be solved.
It really completely shifts your identity, doesn't it? You go from being this passive victim of your bank account to an active problem solver.
Yeah, the rich dad was fanatical about exercising the mind. He called the human brain the most powerful computer in the world. And to him, saying I can't afford it was basically the command to just pull the plug straight from the wall.
So to really understand how that active problem solving works in practice, we have to look at this incredibly harsh lesson the rich dad taught 9-year-old Robert.
Oh, the counterfeiting story. This is wild.
It's so crazy. So it's 1956 in Hawaii, and Robert and his friend Mike, they want to make money. So what do? They collect dozens of used lead toothpaste tubes from all their neighbors.
Because back then they were actually made of lead.
Right. And they melt them down over a red-hot grill, pour this molten lead into plaster molds, and they literally start manufacturing their own nickels.
I mean, they were counterfeiting. 9 years old, running a federal crime ring out of a suburban garage.
Exactly. So the rich dad finds out, and, well, he appreciates the sheer entrepreneurial drive. But he has to gently explain that they're literally breaking the law.
This is probably a good thing to teach a 9-year-old.
Definitely. But because they showed that spark, he offers to teach them how to actually make money. But there's a huge catch.
Right, they have to come work at his sweltering convenience store, dusting cans for 3 hours every Saturday. And he's only paying them 10 cents an hour.
Which, even in 1956, was awful. I mean, a single comic book cost 10 cents back then.
Yeah, it was a totally insulting wage. And that was the psychological setup. The rich dad is intentionally paying them this terrible rate. He's just waiting for them to hit their breaking point.
And it doesn't take long. After a few weeks, Robert is just furious. He feels totally exploited. So he marches in, ready to quit, demanding a raise.
And the rich dad essentially just laughs at him. He says, congratulations, you now sound exactly like every single one of my adult employees.
Wow.
He tells this little kid that this anger, this feeling of being underpaid and overworked, is just a taste of life. Life doesn't sit you in a classroom and lecture you. Life pushes you around.
And every push is life saying, wake up, there's something to learn here.
Exactly. You can either learn the lesson, or you can spend the rest of your life blaming your boss or your job or your meager paycheck for all your problems.
And this is where he introduces this concept of the emotional trap of fear and greed. It's this psychological cycle that keeps most people trapped in what he calls the rat race.
Yeah, the donkey and the carrot analogy.
Right, so fear is the alarm clock. The fear of not paying the rent, the fear of starving, of failing. That fear wakes you up and pushes you out the door to your job every morning.
But then you get the paycheck.
Yeah.
And the second emotion kicks in immediately, which is greed or, desire.
You look at that money and you start thinking about the vacation, the nicer car, going out to better restaurants.
And so the pattern locks in. You work, you earn, you spend, you panic as the money runs low, and then you work again. You're basically the donkey chasing a carrot dangling from a stick.
It totally makes me think of a treadmill. Like when you're on a treadmill, you're putting in all this energy, sweating, getting totally exhausted. But when you get a raise or a promotion, it's not like you get to step off the treadmill.
No, you just increase the speed in the incline.
Exactly. Your lifestyle gets more expensive, so your fear of losing that lifestyle just gets bigger. You're running faster, but you're still bolted to the exact same spot on the floor.
That is the perfect way to look at it.
Mhm.
So to force these kids off that treadmill, the rich dad does something that sounds totally insane. He tells them that if they want to keep learning from him, they have to work at this store for free.
Wait, free? Like 0 cents an hour?
0.
Okay, wait, I have to jump in here. If I have a mortgage, a car payment, and massive grocery bills, I can't just walk into my boss's office tomorrow and say, hey, please stop paying me. I'm trying to learn a lesson.
Right.
How does this actually apply to an adult with actual bills? Isn't ignoring a steady paycheck just a recipe for starvation?
It's a great question. Because, the literal takeaway isn't to volunteer your time at your corporate job. That would be crazy. The mechanism here is about decoupling your time from your income.
Okay, explain that.
By taking away the comforting crutch of those 3 little dimes, the rich dad forced the boys to stop looking forward to payday and start actually looking around the room. When you aren't blinded by the immediate relief of a paycheck, you start seeing opportunities that everyone else misses.
And they actually do find one, right? Because they're working for free, they notice the store manager throwing away unsold comic books.
Yeah, she was just returning the top half of the cover to the distributor for credit and tossing the rest.
So the boys make a deal to keep the rest of the book, provided they don't resell them, and they decide to start a library in a basement.
That's brilliant. They hire a studious younger sister to run the door, and they charge the neighborhood kids 10 cents admission to read as many comics as they want in 2 hours.
Which is such a good deal for the kids. But for Robert and Mike, suddenly they are pulling in $9.50 a week.
Which was huge money for kids back then. But notice the mechanics of what they actually did. They built a system. Even when Robert and Mike were at school or out playing baseball, that library was generating income.
They weren't trading their hours for dimes anymore.
Exactly. They had built their very first asset.
So if that comic book library is the escape hatch from the treadmill, we really need to get incredibly clear on what an asset actually is, because the source material argues that financial illiteracy is the real root cause of the middle-class struggle.
Yeah, people just get the definition of an asset completely wrong.
Yeah.
But the rich dad applied the KISS principle, keep it super simple.
Right. Forget depreciation schedules or crazy complex accounting jargon.
Exactly. It comes down to basic math and just the direction of your cash flow.
The golden rule, right? An asset puts money in your pocket. A liability takes money out of your pocket. That's literally it.
It's so simple, but people miss it. The rich buy assets. The poor only have expenses. And the middle class, well, this is the real trap, they buy liabilities that they mistakenly think are assets.
And the most controversial, deeply ingrained example of this is the family home.
Oh yeah, the source goes hard on this.
The poor dad believed his house was his greatest investment. But the rich dad looked at that exact same house, ran the numbers, and called it a liability.
Yeah.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because that attacks the ultimate American dream. I mean, every financial advisor, every parent tells you that buying a house is forced savings. It appreciates. How can we tell you, the listener, not to buy a house? Are we really saying that?
Well, the source isn't saying never buy a house. It's about understanding the absolute strictest definition of cash flow. Look at the math of homeownership. When you buy a house to live in, what happens to your cash?
Well, you pay a mortgage.
Right.
You pay interest to the bank, property taxes to the city. You have to pay for insurance, a new roof, fixing a broken water heater.
Exactly. Every single month, money is flowing out of your pocket. Therefore, mathematically, it is a liability.
And it's not just the direct cash flowing out, is it? It's the unseen costs.
Okay.
The opportunity cost.
Oh, massive opportunity cost.
Right.
If you sink all your available capital into a massive down payment and tie up all your monthly free cash in a mortgage and maintenance, you have zero capital left to invest in things that actually generate income.
Right, you miss out on the financial education of investing because all your money is just trapped in drywall.
Right. So the wealthy strategy is about sequencing. It's about buying income-generating assets first, like, say, a rental property that pays you positive cash flow every month, or a solid portfolio of dividend-paying stocks.
And then you use the cash flow from those assets to pay for the luxury of the big house.
Exactly. You let the assets buy the liabilities.
It totally rewires how you define wealth. The author points to Buckminster Fuller's definition, which I think is just brilliant. Wealth is not your net worth.
No, it's not adding up the value of your car, your golf clubs, your TV, and the speculative equity in your home.
Wealth is measured by time. If you stopped working today, how many days could you survive forward?
It's such a profound shift in perspective. You achieve actual financial freedom the exact moment that the passive cash flow from your assets exceeds your monthly living expenses. At that point, going to your job becomes optional.
So what does this all mean for someone listening? If the entire game is just math, accumulating enough assets to cover your expenses, how does the average person actually get the capital to buy those assets if they are stuck working 40 hours a week just to pay their rent?
Well, the secret lies in understanding the vast difference between your profession and your business.
Right.
The source illustrates this with a famous story about Ray Kroc, the man who built McDonald's. He was speaking to MBA students at the University of Texas. And over beers, he asked them this simple question. He said, "What business am I in?"
And the students all laughed, right? They said, Ray, come on, you're in the hamburger business.
Yeah, and Kroc just looked at them and told them, "My business is not hamburgers. My business is real estate."
Wow. He realized that selling franchises was just the mechanism. The real strategy was using the hamburger stand to buy up the most valuable intersections and street corners in the entire world.
Exactly. The franchisee was essentially just paying off the mortgage on McDonald's real estate empire.
That perfectly captures the difference. Your profession is what you do to earn a paycheck. It's your income column. You are a software engineer, a nurse, a mechanic.
But your business is your asset column. The tragedy of the rat race is that most people spend their entire lives minding someone else's business.
Yeah, they work 40 hours a week to make the company owner rich. Then they pay a massive chunk of their income to make the government rich through taxes.
Right.
And then they take whatever is left and pay the bank to make them rich through mortgage interest. You just spend your whole life working for everyone else's asset column.
It's bleak when you put it that way, but yeah.
Mm.
So the strategy here is keep your day job. Be a fantastic, hardworking employee. But start minding your own business. Take a portion of every paycheck and inject it into your asset column.
Now, I want to clarify something here, because people here start a business on the side and they immediately think of the modern side hustle.
Oh, sure.
Like, oh, I'll drive an Uber on the weekends, or I'll do freelance coding at night. But driving an Uber isn't an asset. It's just a second profession. You've just stepped onto a second treadmill, trading more time for money.
That's a crucial distinction. Minding your own business means acquiring things that do not require your physical presence to generate value.
Like the comic book library.
Exactly. Real estate that produces rent, royalties from intellectual property, stocks, bonds. Every single dollar you put into that asset column becomes an employee that works 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and never asks for a coffee break.
So let's play this out. I keep my day job, I live below my means, I start buying actual assets, the cash starts flowing in. But almost immediately, I slam into a massive brick wall of the taxes. As my income goes up, my taxes go up. How do the wealthy protect this new income stream?
Well, this brings us to playing by the rules of the rich, and specifically, the history and mechanics of taxes. Now, just to be clear for everyone listening, we are looking at the author's historical interpretation here, entirely impartially.
Right, because the poor dad loved government intervention and higher taxes on the rich, while the rich dad was a pure capitalist who hated taxes and viewed them as a penalty on productivity. We're just looking at the mechanics they discuss.
Exactly. So the source points out that historically, in places like the US and the UK, there actually were no permanent income taxes. They were only levied temporarily to pay for wars.
Right, and when a permanent income tax was finally introduced, it was pitched to the masses as a Robin Hood tax. Like, don't worry, we are only going to take from the ultra-wealthy, and the masses supported it based on that mentality.
But the author argues that the government's appetite for money just grew and grew. And once that tax infrastructure was in place, it inevitably expanded, and the burden eventually trickled all the way down to the middle class and the poor.
But the rich didn't just sit there and complain. They fought back using a legal structure that has existed for centuries, the corporation.
Yeah, and I think people really misunderstand what a corporation actually is. They picture like a giant skyscraper with a glowing logo on it.
Exactly. But a corporation is not a factory, and it's not a group of people. It is merely a legal file folder sitting in an attorney's office, registered with the state government.
But the rules governing that little file folder are the ultimate financial cheat code.
Let's break down the actual mechanics of why it's a cheat code. If you are an employee, the flow of money works like this. You earn the money, you get taxed immediately on your paycheck, and then you try to spend whatever's left over to live. Earn, tax, spend.
But if you operate through a corporation, the flow reverses completely. A corporation earns, it spends everything it possibly can pre-tax, and it is only taxed on whatever is left over. Earn, spend, tax.
So what does that actually mean in reality? It means if you have a legitimate side business, say a small LLC for your real estate investments, certain expenses become business deductions.
All right, a portion of your internet bill, your cell phone, business meals, travel to inspect properties.
You are paying for those things with pre-tax dollars. Meanwhile, the employee is paying for those exact same things with post-tax dollars. The mathematical advantage is staggering.
This is exactly why the rich dad insisted that the ultimate asset isn't real estate or stocks. It's your financial IQ.
Yes, financial intelligence.
It's the synergy of four distinct areas. Accounting, which is the ability to read the numbers and understand cash flow. Investing, which is the science of money making money. Understanding markets, the psychology of supply and demand, and the law, utilizing those corporate tax advantages and legal protections we just talked about.
And when you combine those four pillars, you unlock the ability to literally invent money.
Yeah, the author shares this wild story about a real estate crash in Phoenix, Arizona, to prove this exact point.
Okay, walk us through this one because it's crazy.
So the market crashes, everyone is terrified. The traditional financial planners are screaming on TV, telling everyone to just save their money and put away $100 a month.
But because he had built his financial IQ, he didn't save. He looked for the opportunity that everyone else was too scared to see.
Exactly. He found a house worth $75,000 that was being liquidated by a bankruptcy court for just $20,000.
Wow, that's a steal.
It is, but here's the kicker. He didn't even use his own money to buy it. He borrowed $2,000 from a friend to put down as a deposit, just to lock up the deal.
Okay, so he owes $18,000 on the house. Then, before the deal even fully closes, he runs an ad in the local paper. He offers this $75,000 house for just $60,000. And here is the real hook. Zero money down.
Naturally, the phone rings off the hook. He finds a buyer immediately, but he doesn't ask the buyer for a suitcase full of cash.
Right, so how does this actually work?
He uses a promissory note. He essentially acts as the bank himself. The new buyer signs a legal document promising to pay the author $60,000 over time at 10% interest.
Oh, I see.
So the author takes those monthly payments from the new buyer, uses a portion of it to pay off his underlying $18,000 debt to the original seller, and just pockets the difference.
He literally created a $40,000 asset out of thin air. He didn't go to work and swing a hammer for it. He used his mind to orchestrate the transaction.
Yeah, and he did a few of these, creating $190,000 in paper assets that paid him roughly $19,000 a year in passive income. And he did it for about 30 hours of actual work.
Okay, but I have to push back hard here because making it sound that easy is dangerous. What if the person who bought the house loses their job and just stops paying the note?
Right, default.
Yeah, I mean, foreclosure is a legal nightmare. It's expensive, it takes months, sometimes years to evict someone. Isn't this strategy massively risky or just taking advantage of a broken system?
Well, it's completely valid to point out the headache of foreclosure, and the source isn't claiming that real estate is some magical, stress-free utopia. It absolutely involves lawyers, courts, and immense frustration. But the author's perspective on risk is just entirely different from the average person.
Like so.
Yes, a default is a headache. But if they default, he forecloses, he takes back the house, he keeps the down payment if there was one, he keeps all the monthly payments they already made, and then he just sells the house again to a new buyer for a new fee. He mitigates the risk through his financial intelligence and his understanding of the law.
So he's saying the risk is manageable if you actually know what you're doing.
Exactly. To the author, the true risk isn't real estate. The true risk is clinging to the false security of a single paycheck, relying on a corporate job that can be taken away on a random Tuesday morning by a manager you don't even like, letting fear suppress your financial genius while the economy shifts around you. That is what he considers highly risky.
That is a complete paradigm shift. We have unpacked a massive amount of the source material today. We've seen that getting out of the rat race isn't about running faster on the treadmill. It's not about begging for a promotion so you can go buy a bigger house that just drains your bank account every single month.
No, it's about recognizing the emotional traps of fear and greed before they dictate your life.
Right.
It's about rigorously applying the golden rule of cash flow to understand the mathematical difference between an asset and a liability. And it's about keeping your day job, but taking your capital and minding your own business.
And of course, relentlessly building that financial IQ, accounting, investing, markets, and the law. So you can start playing by the rules of the employee and start playing by the rules of the rich.
Because in a world of rapid economic change, clinging to that old map of go to school, get a safe job, and save money is actually the riskiest path. Developing your financial intelligence is what gives you options when life inevitably pushes you around.
So we want to leave you with one final, deeply provocative thought from the source material to just, mull over on your own.
Yeah, this is a big one.
The author makes the claim that money is not real. It is simply an agreement. It is an illusion fueled entirely by collective confidence. If the most powerful asset you possess is your own mind, what agreements or illusions about money are you currently accepting as absolute truth in your own life? What inherited maps are you following right now that might actually be keeping you trapped? Think about it. We'll see you next time on the Deep Dive.